Welcome to Practical Changemakers, a carbon positive story. I'd like to acknowledge that we're speaking to you today on Wajak Noongar Boodja and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. My name is Louise Tarrier and I'm the CEO of Carbon Positive Australia. Our mission is to empower and encourage everyone in Australia to take action that revitalises and improves the health of landscapes and communities. We do this via our carefully selected Australian tree planting projects and by providing inspiring education programs. We plant trees to offset carbon emissions, connect communities, and encourage everyone to make climate healthy choices that go beyond being carbon neutral. Our planting benefits nature, community, and the wider well-being of our regions. Through our work, we get to talk to and spend time with people who are working for the health of our environment every day. These practical change makers and leaders often don't make the headlines, but the work they do is vital in our changing world. And Lauren, that was one of the reasons why we decided that we wanted to do a podcast series, wasn't it? To try and get some of these people out to a wider audience, because Lauren and I often go to events and sustainability networking, and we meet all these amazing individuals who are doing just some great stuff out in the world. And yet the general public, I think, don't seem to realize or even know that there are these amazing people out there. So it was our decision, I think, to try and introduce some of these people to you all and to also give you some insight as well into Carbon Positive Australia and what we do and why we do it. Lauren, sort of give us an example of a couple of the people that you've sort of met out and about on your different networking events and who you think we'd love, subjects that we want to really talk about.
So I think for me personally, a big advocate for sustainability. So April from Matrix Sustainability Consultants. She's a small business owner, left a corporate job to step into something that she's passionate about. We've got Shaka from Donut Waste,
yes,
working with cafes around Perth. And it's really important to highlight what some of these individuals are doing because it helps to inspire others at an individual level and a collective level to do more and make changes.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's inspiration, isn't it, that's really key. These people are just doing such amazing work out there. And, as Carbon Positive Australia, we obviously go out to different landholders or at different events and we kind of get to meet them and then we find out, but we don't get to share it. And we thought that actually having these podcasts was a really good opportunity to sort of just share that information and also to share with our audience as well a little bit about what we do as an organisation in a different format rather than just always, producing written information. And so, Lauren and I decided to cook up, well, how can we do a podcast and what sort of podcast would we like to do? What would our potential audience want to listen to? And I think for me, I really enjoyed thinking about who actually to bring on to these podcasts and who we might kind of want to speak to and try to give everyone that range of diversity as well. Talking to people like Basil Sher, who looks after our project at Tutanella for Green Skills. And listening to his story and why he decided to get into that space was one of my kind of, I think, favourites, because being able to get out onto the land and always get to the projects, our donors aren't able to do that. But I think through these podcasts, they get a bit of an insight into what actually happens.
Exactly. And I think it's a great opportunity for people to learn what we do within the team as well. For example, people get to listen to Jess, who worked quite heavily on our new carbon footprint calculator, Catherine, our head of partnerships. And so it's about finding a bit more about what we do, but the people that we work with and who we're aligned with as well.
Yeah, we really as well interested in any guests that you'd like us to kind of get on as well, because I think we want to make this a podcast that is something that you actually, as our audience, want to listen to and find out about subjects that really interest you. I know for Lauren, she's really, sustainability is her key interest. For me, obviously, I'm really interested in what's happening out on the ground, particularly in terms of biodiversity and tree planting. And all of these aspects and all of the views and different views that people are bringing, it's just quite fascinating. And I think something that for you as our audience, we'd love to hear more about what you'd like to hear about too. So I think today we're going to talk a little bit more about Carbon Positive Australia and what we actually do for those who've just found this podcast and think, hey, who are these people? What are they kind of talking about and, why do they do what they do? So Carbon Positive Australia began as the Carbon Neutral Charitable Fund back in 2001. It was a Men of the Trees project. And it was started really to try and take advantage of what was then the emerging carbon market to enable restoration to happen and be funded. And so over its history, it's planted over 6 million trees and we've sequestered over 660,000 tons of carbon. So it's been a very successful small charity over here in Perth, Western Australia. And we know now that, the climate issues that we're facing are obviously becoming more and more crucial. And one of the things that we're also realizing is that all carbon offsetting and plantations are just not the same. We hear quite often, that's a biodiverse carbon plant. And actually, there's maybe 5 or 6 species. And we understand that that's not going to do the things that's needed really for the loss of species that we're experiencing, that actually we need to do carbon planting in a completely different way. We need to do it in a multi-species way. And I think, it's often called, or these things are often called co-benefits, but we like to refer to them, I think, we've coined the term now key benefits, because they're key to our survival as a species and our own personal health and well-being. Biodiversity is such a key to that. And then we also, as well as our tree planting activities, we also help people with information. Lauren, tell us a little bit about what it's like to use our personal carbon calculator.
So we have, at Carbon Positive Australia, to educate, encourage, empower and restore are the pillars by which we stand. So education is a huge focus for us, and we released our new household carbon footprint calculator this year. So it allows individuals the opportunity to look at their footprint and see where they can make changes for the better. It's done in a way which is very interactive, offers insights and tips. And I feel like we've come into a world where there is a lot of, the term is being coined as eco-anxiety. So people do feel a bit anxious about where to start. And this really gives people a place to start. You can use your Australian averages to work out your footprint, or you can dive a bit deeper. And of course, we're always here to help people out with that as well.
Yeah. And we've got a whole podcast, which is just about our carbon calculator and how it came into being. So if you're interested in carbon calculation, and particularly in how you can reduce your carbon, because we think that's, highly important, how you actually reduce, and having those hints and tips on how to do that. So make sure that you tune in to that particular podcast, because want to know information about calculating carbon footprint, that's definitely the one to listen to. So we're looking at always in the organisation how we can improve and make better, more climate healthy choices. And we're also kind of experiencing as well, we all know climate change is not something that's kind of happening now in the future. We're all experiencing it now currently in our lives, the changing of weather patterns, in the increased heat, increased fire risk. And so one of the things as an organisation that we've innovated over the sort of last 12 months is actually planting in communities. So we're going to be talking to one of our team members, Pollyanna Darling, who's going to be telling us a little bit about those community projects and how they help towards mitigating climate change, particularly in those areas, in city and urban areas where you've got disinvested communities, where heat issues are really impacting people's lives now and their health in particular. So she's going to be telling us a lot about why trees and why we should be planting trees, not just for carbon, but for all these other key benefits that can happen. So I think over the coming 3 months, we're going to be releasing these podcasts. We hope that you enjoy them and you get to learn more about Carbon Positive Australia and what we do, but that you also get to learn about some other areas that aren't necessarily directly what we do as an organisation, but involve these amazing practical change maker people that we speak to on such a regular basis. So I'm just going to finish this very short introductory podcast by just asking Lauren what was her favourite of the series that we actually did, and which one would she recommend that you listen to?
I really liked the podcast with Duncan Ritchie from, I'm probably not going to pronounce this right, Presidio, there we go, close. And Catherine Patterson, who's our head of partnerships. It's a really great one, whether you're a small to medium business or a large corporate. It really gives you some great insights into the changes that you can start to make there.
Yeah, and I think so I'm going to go in with my favourites. So My favourite was definitely Tutanellup with Buzzellshire, as I mentioned earlier, but also to learn more about Uradi and what we're doing with Bush Heritage Australia up at Uradi in terms of the planting and how that all began, and with Tina Parkhurst, who tells us a little bit more about, exactly how it all came into being. So, whatever your interest is, whether it's about renewables, waste, tree planting, carbon calculation, carbon offsetting, whatever your interests are, I think you'll find something to listen to that will inspire you. And deep gratitude to all of those individuals that have helped us to, produce these podcasts and to tell you more about what they're doing.